My name is TheAdipose.
And my name is TheAdiposeTV.
And we're going to be reviewing An Adventure in Space and Time.
Ooh-wee-oo.
Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to our review of An Adventure in Space and Time. And for your viewing and audible pleasure, we're going to be dividing this review into three sections.
Yes, so first of all, this was a little bit different from your average Doctor Who episode, so we are going to be talking about exactly what An Adventure in Space and Time was.
Indeed, and then we're going to be looking at the characters and the plot and talking about, what we liked, what worked, what didn't work within those particular characters.
And then finally, we're going to be giving you our own personal review of the programme, i.e. was it any good, is it worth watching?
Absolutely. But just before we get into the review, we just want to ask you guys something. We've really enjoyed doing reviews of the 50th anniversary and the Night of the Doctor, and we're actually considering going all the way back to Series 1, Episode 1, and maybe kind of just starting to do some reviews of those old classics. And we just wondered if you guys would actually be interested in hearing that and seeing that. So if you are, or in fact even if you're not, let us know in the comments section, because we kind of like to know. Obviously there's no point in us putting together a programme that no one wants to see. But
now, by old classics, are you thinking of from the reboot with Christopher Eccleston and Rose, or are you thinking even older and even classicer than that?
I'm thinking initially Eccleston, and Rose and stuff, but we could always go back and do some other ones at some point. But I'm thinking about, starting with Rose and then, going through that first series. Obviously taking some breaks when real Doctor Who was on, a Christmas special and things like that. But, we've really enjoyed being kind of doing some Doctor Who stuff, and so we'd quite like to do it on a regular basis. And if you'd be interested in that, let us know. Anyway, back to An Adventure in Space and Time. So, Clary, An Adventure in Space and Time. What was it?
Well, so this wasn't your average episode of Doctor Who, so there's no point in turning on and expecting a lot of Cybermen and Daleks around. Essentially, what it was a kind of dramatisation of the first ever episode of Doctor Who. Kind of what happened before, what happened during.
And this was kind of part of the 50th anniversary celebrations from a few weeks ago. In fact, we recorded it on the Skybox a few weeks ago, but we didn't want to kind of put out about 10 reviews in 2 days. We've saved it and we watched it this kind of weekend.
Yeah, that's right. And what it did is it kind of gave us a behind-the-scenes look at what happened, what the kind of production decisions were around that first episode. And obviously it happened at quite a important historical time period. And as the programme explains, quite a lot of people actually missed the first ever episode because of what else was going on in the news at the time.
Absolutely. So this is a programme about Doctor Who rather than a Doctor Who programme, if you guys kind of see the difference. Okay, so the characters and plot. It started off with a lady as our main lead, didn't it?
That's right. It was Verity. So she was the producer of the show. Verity was a really interesting one because back in those days it wasn't kind of the norm that you would have a female producer, so it was really interesting kind of seeing her growth with the role, how other people treated her and how the fact that she was a woman kind of fitted into the plot of.
And it was quite nice seeing the way, as she kind of put the show together, seeing all those little challenges that she had to kind of overcome, and because we know that the ending is they made Doctor Who, don't we? But it was nice kind of seeing her overcoming some problems with the set design, overcoming problems with the script design, and all those kind of little things like that. And there was that lovely scene with the when she had to get the design of the TARDIS. Do you remember? She kind of the designer was refusing to kind of make her a design, and at the beginning of it she kind of went, "Oh dear, well fine, I'm just going to walk away then." But then she came back later and she was like, "No, I am going to do this. I am going to overcome these kind of chauvinistic problems."
And similarly, there was some problems with the actors as well, because not all of them respected her as a female producer.
No.
And in fact, her relationship with Hartnell kind of progressed throughout the programme as well, because initially they had quite a kind of tense relationship, but actually by the end of the show they became quite close, and you could see that he was actually quite touched when she left.
And as I think you can probably see from the way we're describing this, guys, that I actually found the first half of the show actually pretty engaging. I think the way that she developed as a character, the way that she kind of started to put together. She also had a director who was kind of Asian descent, and he was dealing with kind of like issues of racism as well. And I thought the first half, the first time you saw a Dalek, for example, the first time you saw a Cyberman, I mean, little kind of nods for the Doctor Who fans there as well. But it was basically like this kind of process of creation that I felt was actually quite engaging.
And it was almost as much about, or even perhaps more so about, the history of the BBC and the history of the people that work at the BBC, and the kind of politics around it. as it was about Doctor Who.
I did actually think I think we were about 10 minutes in, and it actually was just kind of conversations in boardrooms and behind the scenes that I actually kind of thought, this isn't a kids' programme.
No, you wouldn't sit your 5-year-old down in front of it, would you?
No, because first of all, there was a ton of smoking in it.
Yeah, what was with all the smoking?
Huge amounts of smoking. But that's not criticism. I mean, that was just kind of how things were at the time. But it was just, this wasn't an adventure. Despite the title, it wasn't an adventure in space and time. It was a battle of the boardroom and the set room and the set design and things like that. And
perhaps it was a kind of adventure in time, but in a slightly different way.
Yes, I suppose so. But then there was this strange switch in the middle, because it was about this character called Verity, and it was about them putting together the show. But in the middle, it switched over to Hartnell. You say now, William Hartnell, as you're probably aware, of course, was the first Doctor. And in the middle of the show, it switched over from her making the show to his struggle as an aging actor, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, and also what his relationship with the different people who are producing the show were like, and particularly what his relationship with children was like. Because one of the very first scenes, or perhaps the first scene in which we meet Hartnell, he is with his little granddaughter, who is clearly annoying him very, very much indeed.
And he's got a really quite grumpy character, and they use that to their advantage, because they're saying, he's the grumpy Doctor and things like that, but he is quite a grumpy, not particularly friendly old man, and even Verity has to struggle with him with some points.
But there is that great scene in the middle. Do you remember the scene where they're in the park?
Yes.
So he's in the park, and some child comes up and asks him for his autograph.
Yeah.
And he kind of obliges, and then all of a sudden he looks around, and there's an entire classroom of children who are asking for his autograph. And all of a sudden he's leading them on an adventure through the park. Kind of running away from the Daleks, and you can kind of see how his personal character progresses as he gets into the role, and as he gets more comfortable with being around children and being kind of adored for being the Doctor.
So both kind of characters had their own kind of personal journeys, but it did feel like that Verity suddenly vanished, which I personally found a bit jarring, because the whole first half of the programme I felt was about Verity, the producer, and literally in the middle of it, she just suddenly goes, "I'm leaving," and and in the space of about probably 2 minutes, they had a little kind of party scene for her, but she basically just vanishes from the plot, and from that stage on it's all about him, and because he starts off as a grumpy character, I agree with you that he does go on a journey, he does become more friendly towards children, but he is at his core basically quite a grumpy and unlikable character, and as he then starts to age and he starts to disease, he starts to struggle, but he's still quite arrogant and grumpy, and it's quite hard to, I don't know about you, but I found it quite hard to feel for him, because he didn't necessarily come across as the hero, just more as someone that was kind of bitter and struggling. I don't know, did you feel for him?
I think I felt a little bit more sympathetic to him than you did. I do absolutely agree that the thing was that because the whole programme started being about Verity and ended up being about him, his storyline was never properly started. But I could at the same time see how his character developed, and also see the fact that towards the end he was so committed to being the Doctor. He had gotten used to being adored by his granddaughter, by all of the other children, as being the Doctor, and he desperately was clinging on to that.
Yeah.
He couldn't learn his lines anymore, he was exhausted, he just couldn't do it anymore, but he didn't want to let go because he needed to be the Doctor for the children.
He was the Doctor, and then of course there was this kind of foreshadowing going on all the way through. This line kept coming back in of no one's replaceable, no one's replaceable, that kind of stuff. And then of course as we kind of knew where it was going, actually he was replaceable, and of course that started off a famous TV tradition of actually the Doctor regenerates. It's one of the few TV shows I think ever where you can replace the lead character. And imagine if Captain Kirk was suddenly, William Shatner was replaced by someone else. And obviously he has been replaced now in the relaunch, but it's not within the same kind of world. And so it ended up with actually a really, really nice plot device. But there was that very sad scene, and I will give it this one, where William Hartnell broke down, kind of crying over his fireplace, and his wife kind of came to hug him, and you could see, the kind of struggling he was going through. And actually, that does show actually how good the acting was. I mean, I thought the acting and direction of the show was very, very good. The Verity, the William Hartnell, good likenesses as well. They showed
really good likenesses.
They showed the kind of real photos at the end, and they really put a lot into it.
Okay then, Mr. Pose, what is your final review of An Adventure in Space and Time?
I thought it had some lovely moments, and I thought it started very, very well, but I did start to lose my kind of engagement with it when it turned over to William Hartnell. I thought it was good, well put together throughout, but I think narratively it kind of switched in the middle, and it struggled for that. There was this random cameo of Matt Smith towards the end, which obviously was there for the fans, the celebration of the 50th, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't quite understand it, because basically what you get is this scene of the William Hartnell character is about to quit being Doctor Who. He's obviously devastated personally that this has happened to him, and then Matt Smith kind of appears next to him, gives him a little smile and a wink, and off they go. And I guess the feeling is kind of, you're supposed to be like, well, don't worry, Doctor Who carries on, and actually there'll be a Doctor 11 Doctors after you. But I didn't really feel that was what William Hartnell was upset about. He wasn't sitting there going, oh my god, Doctor Who can't continue. He was there going, oh my god, my life is really coming to an end as I know it. So I didn't really see why that the Matt Smith was there. I mean, I'm all for cameos, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel that one really fitted. So there was just a few things that I felt didn't sit quite so well, but it did engage me throughout. I did think there was lots of good stuff there to talk about it. But for me, I think it's a kind of I think it's thumbs in the middle. I'm not in, I wasn't entirely sure.
Thumbs in the middle, are you?
Yeah, I'm thumbs in the middle. There were some good bits, there were some bad bits. I'm glad I watched it, but overall as a package, thumbs in the middle. Mrs. Pose?
I'm going to be a bit more generous with you and go one thumbs up.
One thumbs up.
One thumbs up. I think that in general it set out what it did what it intended to do.
Yeah.
Because it was about the history of how the first ever episode of Doctor Who was made, and about the characters surrounding that. And I learnt about that. I learnt about the struggles in making the show. I learnt about how it kind of rose in popularity, and I learnt about how the first Doctor, was eventually replaced. So it achieved those aims. I almost felt like it could be two separate shows, one focusing on Verity and one focusing on the first Doctor.
Yes, I think I probably would have liked it more than that, because it concluded both of their stories.
Exactly.
So I'd kind of like to know where Verity went.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's a different show then, because it's kind of like the story of Verity rather than the story of Doctor Who. So perhaps it was a slightly flawed brief. But that's cool, guys. Let us know what you thought of it in the comment section. We're more than happy for you to disagree with us and agree with us, and tell us what you liked and tell us what you didn't like. And of course, do let us know your thoughts about whether you'd like to see us do more reviews in the future. So, an adventure in space and time. Thank you very much for watching. Do give the video a like, and
please subscribe if you haven't already done so.
absolutely. Take care, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.